You're listening to Little Green Cheese, episode 54. Well, welcome back, Curd Nerds. I know it's been a long time in between shows, but I've been very busy lad over the Christmas break. I have been making YouTube videos like they're going out of fashion. In fact, I've started up a recent series on Wednesdays, which is called Ask the Cheese Man. Now, Ask the Cheese Man has been quite popular. And besides that, so many people have also been asking, where have the podcasts gone? So what I thought I'd do is to repurpose a little bit of this content that I've been producing in Ask the Cheese Man and bring it to you here. Look, I realise that people consume their information or knowledge or entertainment, whatever this is called, whatever cheese making is called, in different manners. Some people are visual, some people use audio to get that information and to retain it and then to enjoy it. So, without further ado, what I'm going to do is pop in some of the questions that I was asked during Ask the Cheese Man session number 3. Now, Sherrie writes, my question is regarding the use of unpasteurised goat milk. We have milk goats and all the cheese we make uses goat's milk. Question 1, is it necessary to pasteurise the milk? What I mean by that, does it affect the end product? I understand it is safer and required by law if we sell it. Actually, I think they just passed a law in Australia that cheesemakers can use unpasteurised milk. Well, the answer to that question, Sherrie, is that yes, there has been a change in the Food Standards Act, specifically under cheese making, where people in Australia can make cheese under certain conditions using raw milk. Basically, those conditions are that you must cook the curds above 48 degrees Celsius and that you must mature the cheese for more than 60 days, and it also has to be at a temperature of below 10 degrees Celsius. So I think your question is, how is it going to change the flavour, really, more than the law and all that sort of stuff? Raw milk cheese is extremely flavoursome, and that is because all of the native bacteria from the environment, from the grass that the animal eats, from how well the animal is, gets transferred into the milk and therefore gets transferred into the cheese. So raw milk cheeses, and I've only tasted one or two, they are amazing. They have a completely different flavour than you would have if you had made the same cheese with, say, pasteurised milk. Because during the pasteurisation process, all of the bacteria, native bacteria I just talked about, or flora, they call it, is killed off. And when you use pasteurised milk for cheese making, you have to reintroduce bacteria back into the cheese, and that way you then have the acidification required for the rennet to work and for the lactose to get converted into lactic acid, which makes the cheese sour and over time flavoursome. So yes, the thing about safety, I think if you're using your own animals, which you are, you say you are, and that you know how clean they are, and that you use the milk within 3 hours of milking the animal, then it's going to be as safe as you can get. So give it a go. You will find the flavour is more intense, and it has the flavours introduced from your areas. I think the French have a word for it called terroir, or terroir, spelled Terrior. And it means the environment that the cheese is made in. Specific cheeses have that as part of their AOC certification in those sorts of countries. Anyway, the second question that Sherrie's asked me is, can I use goat milk for all the cheeses you make? I have on your website and in your ebook or does goat milk affect the way that some of these will turn out? Well, the quick answer to that is yes, you can. And there's a caveat on that, is that you need to use 15 to 20% more rennet when using most of the recipes that specify cow's milk for the cheese. And the reason behind is that goat's milk has smaller fat globules and is naturally homogenized. The cream doesn't rise to the top with goat's milk as it does with cow's and buffalo milk. You don't see a cream line. So because the fat globules are smaller, you need to use a little bit more rennet to set the casein within the cheese, which is the white stuff that turns into curds. And you shouldn't have too much trouble. Pretty easy to work out. Just figure out how many milliliters of rennet that's in the recipe, and then times that by 15 or 20%. You'll have to experiment, of course. I've seen goat's milk camemberts or fuzzy goat's cheeses, as they're known. I've seen blue cheeses made out of goat's milk. Feta obviously is made out of goat's milk traditionally anyway. You can make cheddars out of goat's milk. They'll be a lot whiter because cow's milk naturally has beta-carotene, which gives it a yellowy to orange colouring as it ages. So the cheeses will be a lot whiter. So hopefully, Sherrie, I've answered all your questions, and that everybody watching or listening gets some value out of these weekly Q&As with Ask the Cheese Man. Now, after I recorded that episode, I'd realised that I had made a mistake. So the very next day, I had to do another follow-up Ask the Cheese Man Q&A. So here it is. Well, g'day, curd nerds. I'm back so quick. You didn't expect me until Wednesday. And that's because last night I lost a bit of sleep. And the reason is something was nagging me about yesterday's episode. And it was about the question about how to adjust the recipes for goat's milk. And I suddenly realised, and I did a bit more research, that I was in error. So really, let me just correct it. Yesterday I said that you're supposed to increase the amount of rennet when using goat's milk to make cow's milk recipe cheeses. It's actually the other way round. And the reason that is because goat's milk has a lower pH, or a lower potential hydrogen, which means it is more acidic than what cow's milk is. And being more acidic, you don't need as much rennet, because rennet acts upon the acidity of the milk. So therefore, you reduce the amount of rennet used when using goat's milk with a cow's milk recipe. Now, where I got mixed up was because I use cow's milk all the time, and when I use a goat's milk recipe, I actually have to increase the amount of rennet by 15 to 20%. So, unfortunately, that's where I made the mistake. I'm only human. I did check my facts again for the second time, and thankfully they are correct. So, when using goat's milk and it says cow's milk in the recipe, make sure that you decrease or reduce the amount of rennet by 15 to 20%. However, if you're having success already with my recipes, which are all for cow's milk, and you're using goat's milk, don't change a thing. You're doing everything right. Well, there you go. Goat's milk is a lovely medium in which to make cheese with, if you can get your hands on it. Unfortunately, all of the store-bought goat's milk that I can get around here is ultra-pasteurised, so it won't set a curd, unfortunately. I'd love to get my hands on some fresh goat's milk, so if anybody who lives close to Melton, where I live in Victoria, then I would love to hear from you via email, and you can shoot me an email via my contact page on littlegreencheese.com. Now, there are quite a few listener questions, and they are in the form of voicemail, but what I'll do, I'll play one or two, and then that way we will be able to have more questions for future episodes instead of me using them all up in this one. Anyway, here's the first one.
Hi Gavin, Jacquie from New Zealand. I wonder if you could help me please. Should it be taken as read that you put any cheese that you are maturing into a plastic box before putting it into your cheese cave? Thank you.
Well, thanks for your question, Jacquie. I know it's been about 3 months since you asked it, and I apologise for that. No, it's not a given. You don't necessarily have to put all of your cheeses into a plastic ripening box to ripen the cheese. So, and it may seem pretty obvious when I say it. So, if you wax your cheese, you don't need to put it in a ripening container. You just have to make sure that the humidity of the cheese cave or cheese fridge is at least 80% relative humidity. Same goes for if you vac pack any of your cheeses, so vacuum pack or vacuum seal, whatever you want to call it. You don't need any humidity in the fridge. You just have to keep it at a lower temperature using either an external thermostat or jerry rig somehow the internal thermostat of the cheese fridge. The only ones that I use maturation boxes for are the bloomy rinds, also for any washed rind cheeses like Munster and Tilsit. I also use maturation boxes for Stiltons, any blue cheeses, to make sure that they don't cross-contaminate other cheeses. And I've currently got a Gruyere maturing in the cheese cave. I've got that in a plastic box as well because I don't want that particularly contaminated, and I want it to form a natural rind. So there's some of the instances where you don't need it, and some of the instances where you probably do need to put your cheese into a maturation box. Thanks for your question, Jacquie. And here's the next question, all the way from the United States.
Hi, Gavin. My name is Murat. I'm calling from New York, and I'm one of your fans. I've been a fan for the last couple of weeks now, and a few days ago I tried my first feta cheese. I really want to thank you for the video. It's really instructive. It's wonderful. Um, I have a question though. Um, my feta turned out to be a little bit rubbery. I was hoping to get something like it more crumbly, more fatty, um, like big chunks coming out of the cheese, kind of cheese. But right now it's in the brine. It's been like 2, 3 days. It's sitting there. I tasted it. It tastes quite well, but it's not like the crumbly feta that I'm used to. What do you think I'm doing wrong? Can you please help me? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much for your question, Murat. Yes, I think I do know what may have gone wrong. It sounds like that you have cooked the curds at too high a temperature, or you have cut the curds too small and they haven't retained moisture. The crumbly cheese does have still does have a fair bit of moisture in it. It sounds a bit like you've created some sort of mozzarella there. And I know that from over-renneting or from cutting your curds too small or from stirring it too long, then you will have fairly rubbery curds. Another way that may happen by getting rubbery curds is if you have pressed it at a pressure too high as well. That sometimes happens, but definitely overheating, I think, may be the issue. It certainly makes they'll make that style of cheese anyway to turn rubbery and the paste to contract. I personally haven't had that issue with making feta, so hopefully some of my suggestions, albeit a little bit late, will help you make a better feta. Thanks again for your question, Murat. And we've got one last one.
Bonjour. Hello, Mr. Weber. I see or I look your video for the cheese. I want to do cheese for myself, like you. but I am to stay to Canada. I can find where place for buy renate in everything for eat cheese like you do.
Well, thanks, Zaccary, for your question. I think what you were trying to say is, where can I get cheese making equipment in Canada? I have done a little bit of research. There's a few places. There's one well-known one called Glengarry Cheese Making Co. I think that is in Quebec. Hang on, I'll just check on that. Sorry, my mistake. It's a Glengarry Cheese Making, and they are located in Lancaster, Ontario, I believe, in Canada. So you shouldn't have any troubles getting any cheese making supplies from Canada. I know there are a few others, but this is the only one I really know of, because people have written in telling me that they do a fairly good job of supplying cheese making equipment to people there in Canada. So I hope that answers your question, Zaccary. Well, that's all we got time for this week, Curd Nerds. I will be back next week, I promise, and we will have more cheese-making questions. Oh, there's the cowbell. Yeah, it's definitely time to go. For upcoming workshop dates and recipes, you can find them over at littlegreencheese.com, including my book, Keep Calm and Make Cheese, The Beginner's Guide to Cheese Making at Home. You can also find kits, supplies and ingredients over at littlegreenworkshops.com.au. Now, if you want to support my work on the podcast and on the video channel cheeseman.tv, you can click through to you can click through to littlegreencheese.com/support, and that'll take you through to my Patreon account. Thanks for listening, Curd Nerds, and stay tuned for the next episode of the Little Green Cheese podcast. During this podcast, you heard royalty-free music by Kevin MacLeod. I played Malt Shop Bop and Call to the Dairy Cows. Bye.